On Husker Nation, I've got your recruiting rundown. There has been a lot of movement, and Nebraska has been putting in the work on the recruiting trail. Just going to go ahead and apologize in advance. This microphone has been causing me problems all the evening since I started trying to record this, and this is the best I could get it, so hopefully it works for the meantime. But Nebraska's staff, now that it's kind of settled in, has started to really hone in on who their top prospects are. There's a huge wave of spring unofficial visits that are coming in, and then they have set up a massive official visit month for the month of June. But before we dive into it, make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe, you share the video around. That really helps Justin and I out a ton. Also, make sure you're tuning into our Tuesday live episodes. We've had Coach Bill Bush on. We've had Tanner Turch, defensive back, on. We've had Tyson Terry on last week. We had defensive back Caden Vermas on last week as well. And there's more guests in the works. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell so you get notifications, and tune in to our live episodes every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Now, Nebraska has honed in. They have figured out who their number one quarterback is for the class of 2027. We're talking about borderline 5-star Trey Taylor. He is coming in for a spring unofficial, and all these guys I'm going through right now are going to be spring unofficial visits. Trey Taylor's coming in March 27th. We're, 19 days away from that. And the way I read it right now, Nebraska's the team to beat. I think Nebraska is not a clear front runner, but I think they're definitely out in front. If he chooses to stay in the Midwest, I think he ends up a Husker. Michigan will be tough to pull him away. That's, as he described it, his second home. And Illinois is his home. But I think Nebraska has a lead. If he goes anywhere other than Nebraska or even Michigan, I would say he's likely going to a school in the SEC. Texas A&M, LSU, Bama's coming in late. But I really think if he chooses to stay home, he's going to be a Husker. Now, Nebraska needs help on the offensive line. Well, they have 4-star Hayden Ainsworth coming in for a visit. He could be a guard. He could be a tackle. I think Nebraska likes him as a tackle. Now, Hayden Ainsworth lives in Biloxi, Mississippi, but he's actually from Omaha. We've got that in our favor. He's still, and he said it, I have friends, I have family that are all back in Omaha. So this is a kid that has ties to your program. He also reclassified. He was a 2027 player, but he reclassified. So now he's a 2026 player, and he's kind of reset his recruitment. He is a name that you need to know. He reached out to Nebraska after he decommitted from Mississippi State. Nebraska was like, oh, you're 2026 now? Let's go on down there. So they did. They sent the staff down. They met with him. They offered him. And now he's coming back for an unofficial visit. This will be in the springtime. There's not a confirmed date, but my guess, you're probably looking at, if he does come for a spring visit, sometime here in the next 3 to 4 weeks. He has confirmed he's taking an official visit to Nebraska in June. We just don't know that date either. But we'll get out to those big June official visit weekends as well. The big players for him are going to be Alabama, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma to go along with Nebraska. I think Nebraska's got a legit chance here. Another big-time offensive tackle they've got coming in for a visit is 4-star, top 100, class of 2027 offensive tackle Kennedy Brown. He comes in at 6'5", 285 pounds. He's visiting here in a couple of weeks, March 29th. Here's the crazy thing about Kennedy. Keep in mind, he's a true sophomore, or a sophomore in high school. This was his first year starting in high school. And in over 600 pass blocking snaps, he allowed 1 sack. Absolutely insane. And here's another thing, too. His wingspan is over 7 feet. 7'6" wingspan is insane for an offensive tackle. To get that reach, to get that punch out, it's huge. The players for him right now are going to be Texas, Michigan, Mizzou, and Texas A&M. They're the ones to watch early along with Nebraska. Of course, we know this thing's going to probably go a long time. He won't commit anytime soon. And even if he does, it's not over until you sign that dotted line in December. And in his case, it's December of 2026. So we're talking, over a year and a half from now? One guy to keep an eye on that's coming in for an unofficial visit is three-star offensive tackle, Norfolk, Nebraska native, Leighton Burbach. He is a monster on the offensive line, 6'8", 255 pounds. He is visiting for the spring. The one thing about Leighton, he does not have a Nebraska offer. Now, he could get a Nebraska offer, and I would say if there wasn't a 105 roster cut limitation thing that's going into play here soon, he probably would have a Nebraska offer. That 105 is definitely going to hurt a lot of kids. That's a story for another day. But Leighton could get that offer if Nebraska misses on some of their top tackle prospects for this year's class. The one thing about Leighton, too, at 6'8", he's very lean, 255 pounds. That's good, actually. I like those guys that are a little bit leaner in high school because they can come in and gain the proper weight and do it the right way with experts in the nutrition field, experts obviously like Corey Campbell that are going to be training you up, helping you build the right muscle mass. So it's not huge that he's not a 300-pound monster. He's a 2-year. Let's say he gets a Nebraska offer, and let's say he commits and signs with Nebraska. More than likely, he is 2+ years away from seeing the field. And that's not to be negative. That's just to be realistic. He's got to gain a lot of weight, and he's got to gain it the right way. Another offensive line prospect that's coming in for an unofficial visit is three-star Ryan Moret. He is an interior offensive lineman, likely a guard. He is from Miami, Florida, which Nebraska, as we've talked about over and over and over again, has significant roots in Miami and really all of South Florida. Another thing about Ryan, he's the #1 heavyweight wrestler in the state of Florida. We know how much we love wrestlers at Nebraska. Tyson Terry, who we just had on last Tuesday, 4-time state champion, 169-0 in his career. Nash Hutmacher, the greatest wrestler in South Dakota history, off to the NFL. Tanner Farmer was one of the best high school wrestlers in Illinois history as well in the heavyweight. Not only after playing at Nebraska, he went and wrestled at another college, and now I think he might be wrestling professionally or might be like an Olympic wrestler or something. Like, wrestlers and offense and defensive linemen go hand in hand. If you have a really good offensive lineman and they're a wrestler, I wouldn't be shocked if they were a great high school wrestler. A couple teams to keep an eye out. Sorry to go on that wrestling tangent there, but a couple teams to keep an eye out for Ryan Moret is Virginia Tech, Ole Miss, and Miami, the home state school, or the home city school. That's where he is from. Nebraska is going to use their ties to get Ryan out of Florida. I think we have a legitimate chance once he takes his visit at the end of March. Another offensive tackle, and this is just Nebraska is really diving into offensive line recruiting. This one, however, awfully young. Carter Barrett is class of 2028. He's a freshman in high school right now. He's not even ranked. But don't look at the ranking, look at the offers. He's already getting offered by SEC schools. He's 6'5", 275. He's visiting at the end of this month. This is going to be a guy that it just takes years and years to recruit him. But this is the right way to do it, too. Like, you can't just jump in, last minute and recruit kids anymore. This is a year or 2 or 3 long process nowadays. And on the defensive side, we've got 4-star, top 100 defensive end Zane Rowe. He is another class of 2027 player. He is visiting April 26th. He was originally committed to Oklahoma as I keep saying true freshman. Originally committed to Oklahoma as a freshman in high school. He decommitted from Oklahoma a few weeks ago. There's still going to be a player for him, but he just said he wants to kind of take a step back, slow his recruitment down, and then make that decision his senior year. So we're a ways away from anything happening with Zane Rupp, but getting him on campus is huge. And then you can get him back for a game later this fall. And then you can get him back for next spring or next winter, and then get that official visit in June of 2026. It's a long game play. Another edge we've got coming in, 3-star Cameron Wilson. He's teammates with Ryan Moret. He's visiting April 4th through April 6th, and you're going to see something kind of weird here. The two big schools outside of Nebraska for him, Syracuse, who runs the 3-3-5, because they had Tony White, he left to Nebraska, and then Tony White left to Florida State, who now runs the 3-3-5. So the three schools that run the 3-3-5, all of them, for the defensive coordinator was Tony White. This is a Tony White guy through and through. No question about it. Unfortunately, Tony White's at Florida State now. But we got John Butler. We got Terry Braden. We're going to see how he can kind of, get his, recruiting mojo going, because he hasn't really recruited anybody ever. I mean, he's been a coach in the NFL for the last decade. But Cameron Wilson, 6'5", 215 pounds. Last season alone, he had 100 tackles, 32 tackles for loss, and 17 sacks. I mean, that's just incredible. Another consensus 4-star top 100 player. This one's also an edge. His name's Luke Waffle. He set up an unofficial visit to Nebraska for April 5th. His brother does play at Penn State, so he's probably leaning to Penn State right now. We know at Nebraska how many players that have had brothers come through here, or brothers that played on the same team. So we know that's a huge pull. He'll be tough to pull away. But Nebraska getting him in for a visit is huge. Nebraska also has another consensus 4-star player coming in. This time we're talking about Nayland Scott. He is a receiver. He's visiting April 11th, that whole weekend. He's a big-bodied receiver, too, 6'3", 190. That's something Nebraska kind of lacks right now. They have Dane Key, but he'll be gone, and he's not like a true big-bodied receiver. He can do a whole lot. Nebraska needs another big-bodied receiver in that receiver room. All right, now on to the huge June, we'll call it the June official visit season. Nebraska has a beautiful lineup, absolute studs of visitors coming in. There's guys on the offensive line, quarterbacks, defensive backs, wide receivers. They've got an elite group coming in. This first weekend of June is June 6th. They've got offensive lineman Rex Waterman, who we talked about plenty. He's doing a spring visit and then a follow-up official visit in June. So you think Nebraska's probably in the lead here. We've seen his recruitment kind of take off a little bit here. You got UCLA, Boise State, Duke, all vying for his commitment. He did just visit UCLA, I believe, this weekend. I believe he was at UCLA. And then he's also visiting Duke as well. We've got 3-star offensive tackle Matalia Benjamin. Massive dude, 6'8", 305. He's coached by former Husker offensive lineman Tony Finotti. Again, this is that June 6th recruiting weekend. We have wide receiver Jabari Brady, 6'2", 190. He's also officially visiting Missouri on June 20th, and then he's potentially visiting Florida as well for an official visit in May. Now, keep in mind, Jabari Brady is one of those, like I called it, that winter, like elite junior day weekend that I think is January or early February that he previously visited. There's a handful of guys that Nebraska brought in for that winter elite junior day recruiting weekend that are now setting up their official visits or unofficial spring visits to Nebraska. A big one here is consensus 4-star top 200 Nebraska commit defensive back CJ Brunell. This is a big visit for Nebraska because he committed sight unseen. He hadn't visited anywhere when he committed. And remember, when he committed, everyone was like, who the heck is this guy? Except for here. We told you he's going to blow up. He's going to be a consensus 4-star. We were saying this months ago. And look what happened. His recruitment took off. He's a consensus 4-star top 200 player. Keep an eye on Oklahoma. Keep an eye on Penn State. Those are your two big competitors right now for Nebraska. I think Indiana and Wisconsin are kind of in that mix a little bit as well, but I'd say the biggest two are going to be Oklahoma and Penn State. We've been saying it. He is going to be tough to keep. If Nebraska can find a way to keep him, holy smokes, you just got an absolute dude at cornerback. Now, the June 13th weekend, this is another big one for Nebraska. On offensive line, we've got 3-star offensive tackle Moses Sparks coming in. He is a true tackle, 6'5", 275. He's got really long arms. He's got official visits set up to Boise the last weekend in May. He's going to Utah on June 6th through June 8th. Then that Nebraska official visit, June 13th through 15th, and then Texas Tech to round out his visits. That's his top 4 schools. Probably a decision follows after that Texas Tech official visit, June 27th and 28th. Nebraska sees him as a swing tackle, left or right side. Now, if you had to ask me who's in the lead, probably Texas Tech. Nebraska, another offensive tackle. I am loving all the offensive linemen for Nebraska. Consensus 4-star offensive tackle Deacon Schmidt. 6'5", 320 pounds, absolute monster. He could be a guy that probably sees time as a true freshman and then steps into a more significant role as a sophomore. This kid is built to play right now. He's a good 320 pounds. There's a difference between good and bad 320 pounds. He did release his top 8, and boy, is it a battle. Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Colorado, who's probably on the outside looking in, Oklahoma, USC, and Nebraska. Absolutely loaded top 8 for Deacon Schmidt. At running back, Nebraska's got 3-star running back Jamal Rule coming in. He's a big back, 6'1", 205, 210 pounds. He's got that June 13th official visit to Nebraska, and then you'd look at probably NC State, Wisconsin, and Arkansas as the 3 other official visits that he will take. We haven't heard much from finally announced his official visit to Nebraska. We're talking about Millard South's Isaac Jensen, tight end, 6'6", 225 pounds. He's visiting the June 13th weekend as well. Now, keep in mind, I've said this before. There's like 3 or 4 tight ends that Nebraska has really high on their board. And I think Nebraska's taking 2. And I think Nebraska is in a position to tell all 4 of them, whoever takes those 2 spots first is getting those spots. They're not going to play the games with a lot of these kids anymore, I don't think. They're not going to sugarcoat it at all. I think they're going to tell, and we'll get to the other tight ends here in a minute. I think they're going to tell them, whoever takes the first 2 spots, that's yours. The other 2, tough luck. I think that's the way it is. Now, would I say Isaac Jensen's their 1A? No. I would say he's probably their 1C, if I'm being real. We've got 4-star defensive back Dominic Turnbull visiting as well. Long corner, rangy corner, 6'2", 180 pounds. He's seen his recruitment start to rise quite a bit as well. We also have 4-star linebacker Ja'Cory Smith. He's taking his official visit to Nebraska that June 13th weekend, and that rounds out your June 13th visitors. The big one here is June 20th weekend. We've already mentioned like a handful of guys. These are the guys we haven't mentioned yet. Keep in mind, we did a video, a week or 2 ago? Way back. Which it seems way back at this point in time. And a lot of these guys were not confirmed visitors that we're talking about right now. So if you want that full rundown, I'll probably do one closer towards these recruiting weekends. But if you want to kind of start piecing together who's coming, go back to that video from like a week or 2 ago, I think, and you'll see how much talent Nebraska is bringing in. So to lead off that June 20th weekend, we've got Dayton Raiola, the quarterback commit for the 2026 class. He is a 3-star right now. I'm really curious to see how this senior season goes for him. We really need to see something. And it's not that he didn't look good his junior season. Keep in mind, it was his first season starting at high school. Not only that, he plays probably one of the toughest schedules in high school. But I really want to see him take over a game. Not just, I mean, he did a good job, so don't get me wrong. But I want him to see what we saw from Dylan as a senior in high school. Just take over games. He's got an incredibly strong arm, and he's pretty accurate. I mean, as a junior, he had like a 60% completion percentage, which isn't great, but keep in mind, there was 2 games he played in that were torrential downpours. Anyone's completion percentage is going to suck. Even Tom Brady would suck in a torrential down. Well, maybe not Tom Brady because he'd deflate the football, but generally speaking, if you're playing in a torrential downpour, it's not going to be real easy to throw in. But I want to see him start to take over games, and we'll do a film review from his junior highlights soon. We've got the number one running back on Nebraska's board, consensus 4-star, Zephyr Walker. He is a KC kid. This is where Jamar Mosey comes in handy, because keep in mind, Zephyr Walker probably didn't have Nebraska in his top 3 or 4 or 5 until Mosey came on staff. And once Mosey came in, he started chipping away, and before you know it, Nebraska's probably, I'd say, number 1 or number 2 on Zephyr Walker's list. So we've got our number 1 target at running back coming in for that June 20th weekend. Another big-time receiver is coming in as well. Consensus 4-star Ryan Mosley. Dude is an absolute freak. 6'2", 205. And then here's those tight ends that we were talking about a little bit ago. 4-star Camden Jensen. He's teammates with current Huskers Rex Guthrie and Tanner Turch. Tanner Turch we just interviewed 2 weeks ago. And he even talked about how when he was being recruited, everyone was coming to see Camden. No one was coming to see him. Well, Nebraska's on Camden's radar. He released a top 7. It consists of Nebraska, Texas A&M, North Carolina, which he said is one of his dream schools, Florida, UCLA, Mizzou, and Washington. Surprisingly, Washington's on that list. Another 4-star tight end is coming in, Lincoln Watkins. Official visits to NC State and Indiana as well. But Lincoln Watkins, Camden Jensen are probably 1A, 1B at tight end for Nebraska. And then I would probably, like I said earlier, Isaac Jensen's probably 1C. They're all phenomenal options. Don't get me wrong. They're all phenomenal options. I think right now, though, Nebraska would probably take Camden Jensen at 6'5" or 6'7", 250 pounds. The guy is an absolute freak. What he can do on the football field at that size is insane. And then we round out our January 20th weekend visits with 3-star defensive back Danny Odom. And Nebraska's probably second, maybe third, but I would think they're second right now on his list. He's another January Elite Junior Day recruit that came in. I think, you got to go back to just think how many times I said consensus 4-star or a 4-star position player. Consensus top 100, top 150, top 200 player. This is an absolutely loaded group of visitors that Nebraska is bringing in. And this is just the ones that we've added since I did that video a couple weeks ago. This is going to change too. They're going to add more to this list. So make sure you're staying tuned. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you share, you comment your thoughts. Hit that little bell so you get notified when we post a video or when we're going live. Thank you guys so much for joining, and have a great evening or afternoon or morning whenever you see this.